Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2017 Henley Boat Races. A glorious spring day here on Henley Reach, the most famous regatta course in the world. And my name is Robert Trahan Jones, and it's my pleasure to bring you stroke-by-stroke commentary throughout the 8 races on the program this afternoon. The first race is scheduled to get underway in just 4 minutes' time, and those of you who are around the Staff area, up by the Phyllis Court Grandstand, will see the 2 crews representing Oxford and Cambridge University Women's Boat Club's alumni. All of these 18 athletes in the 2 boats have represented their universities at the very highest levels over the last many years. The senior athletes represented Judith Bean in the 4-seat of the Oxford crew, rode in Osiris way back in 1985, and the other athletes a little more recently. So let me run you through the lineups. Oxford won the toss. They chose the buck station. That's the lane away from the tow path, and in the Oxford crew we've got Merrill Lefelt in the bow seat from Osiris last year. Joanne Jansen in the 2-seat. She rode in last year's blue boat that raced on the tideway between Putney and Mortlake. Georgie Daniel is at 3, twice appearance in Osiris the last 2 years. Then Judith Bean, as I mentioned earlier. Rhianna Cairns, Osiris 3 years ago. She's in the 5-seat. Maddie Badcott, 3 times in the blue boat, president last year when they won handsomely over the championship course in London. Emma Spruce also featured in last year's boat race. She races in the 7-seat. Maxie Sheska, the OUWBC president from 2014, 3 times the blue. She is stroking this lineup, which is coxed by Anna Corduroy, who coxed last year's lightweight blue boat. So the Cambridge lineup, they're drawn on the Berkshire station. That's the towpath side. Evelyn Bircher in the bow seat. She represented Blondie the last 2 years. Valentina Futoryanova in the 2-seat. She was a lightweight in 2014, represented Blondie 2 years ago. Then Faye Sanford in the 3-seat in the blue boat in 2011, 12 and 13. Gabby Johansson represented Blondie for 2 years. She's in the 4-seat. At 5, we've got Holly Game, 3 times the blue in 2012, 13, 14, finishing up in Blondie in 2015. And a bit of a late crew change, because in 6 we've got Kat Foote, who raced in the blue boat 2014. At 7, Alice Jackson from last year's blue boat, and at stroke is Fee Macklin, again from last year's blue boat. And they're coxed by Katie Clavernish, very experienced cox, who's steered for Oxford Brookes University and for Leander, and steered a Blondie 2 years ago, 2015. The 2 coxes' hands are raised to indicate that they're not quite ready in these slightly blustery conditions here on Henley Reach. Now, you'll be aware, many of you, that the head of the river race between Mortlake and Putney was cancelled on the tideway yesterday because of the adverse wind conditions. The wind has now swung around slightly, but it's still fairly choppy here on the Henley course as the 2 crews prepare to get straight and ready. Now, we can see the waterman, the Hobbs' pleasure boat, proceeding down the left-hand side of the channel, but the umpire, Claire Briegel, I think is going to allow the race to get underway as soon as the cox's hands are down. Katie Clavernish for Cambridge, her hand is still raised. Little pause for a moment as the athletes prepare. Now, of course, well, despite them being very experienced athletes, they've had very little preparation together. In fact, they had their very first outing, both crews, just this morning. And the umpire's flag is down, and the first race in the Henley Boat Races 2017 program is underway. Good sharp start by both crews, punching away. I've got Oxford at 41, Cambridge at a pip or so lower. I've got them at 39.5 at the moment, and the early lead goes to Oxford over on the buck side, and already Cambridge being warned for their steering. As you'll see, very little to choose between the blades of the stroke side blades and the Cambridge crew, but Katie steering her crew away now to avoid the possibility of a clash, and the water, as is so often the way in these wind conditions, getting a little lumpier as the race progresses. This is going to be challenging conditions here right through the afternoon, I suspect. Once again, the crews move dangerously close. Oxford still have the edge, and once again, it's Cambridge who's being warned for their steering and respond, or do they? Because that gap is getting closer. But the umpire reckons that the two crews now parallel despite that narrow margin. They're not getting any closer, so the clash being avoided. Clavenesh now urging her crew onto greater things, but suddenly there was a kick in from Oxford there. Maxi Sheska up the rate again and has increased the lead to about a third of a length, but Cambridge not out of it by any means, responding and coming back as we approach the bottom end of the enclosures. So it's Oxford in the lead by the narrowest possible margin, and now settling at 34 strokes a minute, and just minimally behind them, Cambridge hanging on there bravely. They drop their rate to 32, and once again the blades are getting closer and closer, but no, and now there goes the umpire's flag, and this time it's Oxford who need to get back on station. Oxford being asked to move over. So the two crews move apart again as they come down within sight of this knot of spectators outside Upper Thames Rowing Club halfway down the course. Well, if you're watching this race on the streaming video, we've got many thousands of spectators worldwide who, though they're not able to be here in Henley this afternoon, are able to follow the racing with live video and hearing the commentary and seeing how close this race is to open the programme. But Oxford kicked in again as we approach Remenham, and in just about 10 strokes they took a further third of a length of Cambridge. They've gone more than half a length up and are now digging in very strong and confidently as we pass Upper Thames, and they're trying to move it out to one full boat length. Oxford now at 33, and again Cambridge are being warned. Cambridge are looking to risk a foul here if they carry on that path. Cambridge still with a slightly lower rate, and Katie Clavenesh having to move out to avoid the blades, the bow side blades of Oxford. But Oxford can now have the finish in sight. Now don't forget that for these first few races on the card, it's only 1750 metres. They are not rowing the full 2,000 metre course. So the finish for the first few races this afternoon will be indicated by the red and white checkered flag halfway down Temple Island Meadow. Well, the umpire being kept very busy already in this opening race. It's Oxford who are being warned because they're deemed to be out of their water, but I suspect that the water is so lumpy that the blades, their bowside blades, are not being felt much by Cambridge over and above the lumpy water they're already experiencing. Well, there's now about a length and a half, I would say, between the two crews. I can see the Forley judge there with his flag raised, so I'll get a much clearer indication of that interval, and we'll be able to give you a clear idea of that margin. But I suspect it's now, well, the gap is now 10 seconds between those two, so we're talking about just over 3 lengths, working on the formula of 3 seconds a length. But the path is now clear down to the finish. Oxford looking very strong and upright. They're able to sit up with confidence, because one of the things about rowing, when you can look back at the opposition and see them astern, that gives a crew added confidence to be able to really dig in, and the pressure really on Cambridge now as we come down river towards Remenham Farm. Very little time left. Maybe just over 500 metres remaining. I can see the finish flag over on Temple Island Meadow here. And Cambridge have narrowed the gap a little, but not significantly. They've got a great deal of work to do. So that push that Oxford did approaching Remenham really brought them dividends. They opened up that full length advantage and then began to move away. Just about 300 metres remaining, and the edge to Oxford remains pretty much the same. Once again, the white water is splashing around this blade work, but Oxford looking very neat and tidy despite their relatively short time together. They've moved way over to Bucks, so the umpire no longer concerned about their race position. And just about 20 strokes remaining of this opening race of this afternoon's programme. The red and white flag on the finish clearly visible halfway down Temple Island, and I suspect that both crews will be greeting it with some relief. Little sway back over towards the towpath side as Oxford approach the finish line, but into the last few strokes they're able to ease up the rate a little as we move down towards the finish line. I can see the finish judge there, and there goes the flag to indicate that Oxford have crossed the line and have won the women's alumni race here this afternoon. So I can bring you the official result there of the women's alumni race here. It was indeed a win for Oxford by 4 lengths, no time taken. Welcome back to the start for the second race on the programme this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and this time it's the men's turn. Now, although it's billed as an alumni race, just as the previous race for women, in fact, these two crews are composed largely of the reserve athletes for the lightweight blue boats that will take part in the final race this afternoon. So we've just got 2 or 3 actual alumni taking part in the two crews. So Oxford won the toss. They chose the buck station once again, as did the previous race. So the buck station away from the towpath, and their lineup includes Rowan Nichols from Somerville College in the bow seat, Peter Burke-Smith from Regent's Park in 2, Alec Trigger from Oriel College, he's in the 3 seat. Then we've got George Spill from St Edmund Hall, Matthew Smith from Balliol, another Balliol man, Charles Garner in the 6th seat, Dylan Liu of Somerville at 7, and they are stroked by Agamemnon Crumpton from Queen's College, and occupying the Cox's seat, Davel Desai from St Edmund Hall. And against them, the Cambridge lineup includes John Swain in the bow seat, Ed Nash at 2 from Keys College, James Wood in the 3 seat, Sam Pettinger Hart, who represented Northwich Rowing Club before going up to Cambridge, and in fact rowed in the home international regatta representing England last year, where he got a gold medal in the junior quad. George Hawkswell, another Keys man, he's in the 5 seat. Hugo Venton, who won a gold medal at the National Schools Regatta last year with Westminster School, he's in the 6th seat. Then we've got Jake Rowe from 1st and 3rd Trinity. Nick Rice is their stroke, he's a Magdalen man, and another Trinity athlete in the Cox's seat, that's Juliet Armstrong. Now, just in case you're coming down to the towpath and wondering what's going on, don't forget that the Henley Boat Races, rowed always at this time of the year, are rowed in the opposite direction from other races you might experience here on Henley Reach, such as the Royal Regatta itself. So the start is right here by the flagpole next to the Phyllis Court Grandstand, and the finish is somewhere down towards Temple Island. 1750 metres away for the first few races on the card, and then the full 2,000 metre distance for the lightweight boat races, finishing on the buck side of Temple Island. Well, I'm pleased to report that the wind seems to have eased a little, not quite as lumpy as it was for the start of the previous race, but the Cambridge Cox's hand is raised to indicate that they're not quite straight and ready. Don't forget, of course, that this bend above the start, the bend that comes round under Henley Bridge, creates quite a little bit of a scour, so there's different currents on both sides of the river. But the stake boats will have been placed under supervision from representatives from both universities, with the idea that they are both in the centre of the stream and that there's no particular advantage to be gained from either station from the stream point of view. So the umpire for this race, once again, Claire Briegel, herself hailing from Northwich Rowing Club up in Cheshire. Very experienced umpire, as are all the officials who take charge here at the Henley Boat Races. She's the first of 3 umpires that we'll see during the race programme. We'll have Chris Drury supervising the Peter Sutherland Memorial Race at 2:30, and then Dave Hancock, a Henley Rowing Club man, who will take charge of the lightweight boat races, which finish off the afternoon's programme with the climax of those 2 boat races. Now, some of you with long memories may remember that there was indeed a lightweight men's reserve race as an official part of the programme, the 2 crews named Nephthys and Granta. But that fell into abeyance some years ago due to a number of issues, especially funding, the maintenance of 2 crews at this sort of level. So who knows, with 2 mainly reserve crews taking part in this year's race programme, maybe we're going to see the resurgence of that aspect of the Henley Boat Races. And finally, the start has been given. A little bit of last-minute adjustments of the positions of the crew, but they're now safely underway. Good, sharp start by both crews. I think Cambridge got the cleaner start on the towpath side. They went off at 42 strokes a minute. A little bit of white water splashing around the blade work of the dark blues on the far side, just a couple of pips lower at 40. And moving down past the stewards' enclosure, it's Cambridge who have the edge, rowing much more cleanly. Nice technique there from Cambridge. The white water continuing to fly, the technique not quite so clean from Oxford. And already the umpire is kept busy, just as she was in the previous race. And this time it's Oxford who are being indicated to get back on station. And now both crews are being warned. And there has been a clash there. I could just hear the stroke blade in the Cambridge crew, I think, touch the bow blade of the Oxford crew. But the race is progressing, and Cambridge really moving on very strongly indeed to try and break clear, just as Oxford did in the previous race. The umpire's flag is raised directly above her head, and that indicates that both crews should move apart. And well, she's getting very busy now, and I suspect this is going to be the shape of things in these blustery conditions right the way through the afternoon. Cambridge seeking to break clear. They've gone 3/4 of a length up as they now settle down into the pace that they hope to maintain throughout the 1750 metres of this race. I have Cambridge at 34 strokes a minute, Oxford a pip lower at 33. Now this is looking dangerous for Oxford. They can't let Cambridge break loose, because once a gap of clear water opens up, that is not just a physical barrier, that's a psychological edge. And for a crew to charge on with a clear water advantage really gives them something to command on. But Oxford really going at it now and are coming up hard on Cambridge's heels, and the umpire furiously trying to get Cambridge back on station. And I think Oxford are going for the bump. They're trying to force a foul here. This is challenging conditions, not only for the crews but also for the umpire now. And the two crews are in line astern. Oxford directly behind Cambridge, and Oxford are being told to get back on station. Both crews being warned, but I think Oxford are missing this chance now unless they can come in for a really strong push here in front of their supporters, in front of Upper Thames. Oxford have raised their rate up to 35, and Cambridge sharper once again, moving away, opening up that little gap, which can't be more than about 6 feet. Once again, Oxford get back on station. They know that they're not going to be able to go for physical contact with the leaders, and are moving right over towards the Buck station. I suspect much to the umpire's relief. The two crews now moving down towards the Fawley Judge. The Fawley marker is about halfway down the course here. We won't be taking an intermediate time for these early races. The Fawley Judge comes much more into their own when we reach the lightweight boat races at the end of the afternoon's proceedings, but it will at least give me the chance accurately to measure the interval between the two crews, which is just under 7 seconds. So that's about 2.5 lengths that Cambridge have the lead now. So a direct reversal of the position that we saw in the previous race between the two women's alumni crews. Oxford really beginning to dig in deep now. You can see the effort on their faces, but really it's not just the strength and power from that crew, but it's the technique that's letting them down here in the Oxford crew. And Cambridge, who've looked much the sharper throughout this race, leading the way and possibly extending their margin as we approach the increasing number of spectators on the towpath here this afternoon, who probably enjoyed a reasonable lunch, come down to Henley to see what all the excitement is about. Well, we've had our fair share of thrills and spills in the early part of the race, largely thanks to the challenging wind conditions here on Henley Reach. But Cambridge surely now about to make it 1-1 in the afternoon's programme, moving away from Oxford. Agamemnon Crumpton, the Oxford stroke, calling for greater efforts from his men. The stroke rate is pretty much the same, but they're trying to lengthen it out. They're down at 32 strokes a minute, trying to tidy up those finishes. That would really put the edge back on, but Cambridge looking very strong and confident. They've got about 20 strokes remaining, I suspect. The finish flag clearly in sight, the red and white checkered flag halfway down Temple Island Meadow. And I suspect the umpire can breathe a sigh of relief now, because the two crews well apart as this race for the University men's reserves reaches its natural conclusion. Cambridge able to ease up the pressure then as we move down to the line. I can see the finished judge's flag is raised ready. There it goes down to indicate, at least in theory, a win there for Cambridge. And we'll get the official verdict in just a moment. So I can bring you the official verdict on that men's reserves race. It was indeed a win for Cambridge, and the official verdict on this occasion, 3.5 lengths. No time was taken. So the next race on the card is the intercollegiate women's race, which kicks off at 1:35, so not long at all. So anybody with launch tickets for that race, if you could make your way to Upper Thames Rowing Club and as soon as possible. Well, following the two alumni and reserves races, we now turn our attention to the intercollegiate races for women and then for men, which have been an integral part of the Henley Boat Race program now in their 8th year. The women's race that we're about to see will feature Keble College for Oxford, who won the toss and chose the Buck Station, against Jesus College representing Cambridge, who will be on the Berkshire towpath side. Now, in the women's race, honours have been fairly even through the first 7 years of this race. Cambridge with 4 to their credit, Oxford with 3. Keble have never previously featured in this particular event, but Jesus were the losers last year when they went down by 4 lengths to Christchurch, and will no doubt be looking to redeem themselves on this occasion. So the two lineups for Keble, we've got Melissa Hinckley at bow, Hannah Stone at 2, Emma Carter is at 3. In the 4th seat is Madeline Price, Ruth Sidorn at 5, then Micah von Swieten in 6. Cecilia Rosen is at 7, and they are stroked by Caitlin Brown, with Michael Hobley in the Cox's seat. For their part, Jesus have Hannah Meyer at bow, Madalena Castro at 2, Beth Hundleby is in the 3 seat, Julia Salabayo at 4, Abigail Smith at 5, Bailey Burgess at 6, Charlotte Jackson is in the 7th seat, and they are stroked by Alex Gutai, and the Cox on this occasion, Elizabeth Robson. Well, officially 4 minutes to race time, but the umpire has the prerogative to set them off early if she feels that they're both ready, and so we'll wait for her decision. The wind, as I say, blowing from the east across the course, creating swirly conditions here on the start. And although I mentioned that it seemed to have eased by the time the second race took place, it's pretty lumpy up here at the start. And great to see the towpath filling up with so many afternoon walkers here on Mothering Sunday, taking advantage of the Henley sunshine that heralds the first good weekend of the spring season. Now, when the intercollegiate races were first decided upon as a useful addition to the Henley Boat Races program, that it was thought that maybe the head crew at torpids for Oxford and at lengths for Cambridge would be a useful way of matching up the leading colleges. And then, of course, it was realised that the head crews are not necessarily the fastest crews on the river. They may be further down the ranks and simply coming up through the divisions. And so what is usually decided is that there's an internal selection trials races at each university to determine which college will represent their university in the intercollegiate races here at Henley. Well, after a few last-minute adjustments there, the race is finally underway, and Jesus have got the sharper start on the towpath side, but Keeble really digging in now and squeezing fast to compensate for that early advantage. Good strong blade work from both crews, and now they hit that lumpy water about 100 meters in, and this really is a challenge for these college crews now as they get stuck into the meat of the race. I'll get some rates for you in just a minute, but the white water really splashing around just as we've seen in the two previous races. I have Jesus at 36 strokes a minute, Keeble a couple of pips lower at 34, but they're making that lower rate count in their favor. They're longer in the water, and their blade work is so much tidier. I can see that as they come forward, the Jesus athletes, they're striking the top of the waves with their blades. They're not feathering as high as they might in order to get a good clean recovery, and by striking the top of the wave, then that of course slows them up. Well, the margin pretty much the same though as we approach the bottom end of the enclosures. Jesus have not let Keeble get away with it. Keeble really though sitting up in the boat looking a lot more strong and confident, but Jesus have upped the rate now, squeezed up a pip to try and get back on terms with the Oxford counterpart. Oh, and there was a disaster there. I think it was the bow athlete in the Jesus crew, Hannah Meyer, just missed a stroke there. I think possibly let go of her blade, but a good recovery there, and that doesn't seem to have set the crew back too much. Still less than a canvas in it as the two crews come down past this picturesque wooden bridge that marks the boundary here with Remenham Club, one of the notable landmarks here on the Henley course. Still very little to choose between the two crews. Now, you'll remember in the two previous races, this was the crunch point. This was the point where one of the crews dug in hard, went for the big push, and broke clear by one boat length. Well, I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it's not like that here in the first intercollegiate race. It is so close. It's still Keeble for Oxford who have the edge. Now, I just wonder what the encouragement from their supporters outside Upper Thames. Can they do something special to raise their crew now here at this crucial stage? There's less than a third of a length in it. The umpire warning Keeble to get back on station. And good news that the wind is rather less challenging at this point. Jesus now tidying up their blade work. I've got them at 33 strokes a minute, and the margin still less than a third of a length now. The blade work from Keeble, though, looking much stronger. They're a pip or so lower, but just as they were off the start, making that lower rate count in their favour. They're currently at 32. And once again, the two crews begin to drift a little closer. And there goes the umpire's flag in expected fashion, and this time it's Jesus who are being warned to move back on to their Berkshire station to reduce the risk of a possible clash between the two sets of blades. Umpire's flag once again raised. Keeble have being let off the hook here because they can clearly see a clear path ahead now, and once again the pressure up onto Jesus trailing in second place. I can see the four-leaf flag over on the towpath, so I'll get you the timing interval between the two crews, and it is so close. There's just over 2 seconds between the two crews, so the margin has now widened out, I would guess, to 2/3 of a length, just as we get stuck into the second half of the race. Remenham Farm, the next landmark. And the two crews are now round the slight kink in the course that marks the Henley Boat Races channel here on Henley Reach. And Keeble really trying to push in hard, trying to break one boat length clear. But all credit to Jesus. Oh, they've just kicked in hard there. They've upped the rate now. They now know it's now or never. They're at 35. Now, can they do something very special indeed? This has been the closest race so far here this afternoon on Henley Reach. and Jesus really trying to come back on terms. Their stroke, Alex Gutai raised the rate a pip. The crew responded, but once again, Keeble have seen them coming. Keeble have responded, but the gap is narrowing. It's 2/3 of the length between the two crews now. So we are past the farm and approaching the final stages, the last 300 meters of this intercollegiate women's race. Looks of desperation on the faces of the Jesus crew. They're wondering what they have to do to try and crack the Oxford opposition. We're coming rapidly down towards the finish line, and yeah, Jesus have kicked in again. They're not to be downhearted, but there is almost one boat length now. I think Keeble are being led off the hook here. We're into the last 15 strokes or so of this intercollegiate race, and Jesus, who fought so hard against the Christchurch opposition in last year's race, they were the losing crew on that occasion, and I suspect it's going to be a similar story here in 2017. The gap of clear water has opened up as Keeble, who are making their first appearance here at Henley as part of the intercollegiate races, are about to record their first win in this event. And the flag over there on the towpath side is now down to indicate a win for Keeble.
There was no jet ski. Yeah, just two others. Yeah.
So, official confirmation of the result of the intercollegiate women's race. It was indeed a win for Keeble, and the official verdict was a length and a half.
Excuse me for asking, are you just here spectating, or are you waiting for the launch of the Oriole race? Well, no, because all the tickets have gone, but I don't know who the ticket holders are, so I was just checking to see who You're on for the Oriole Chaps, are you? Okay, thank you. Which I'm about to hand over a beer voucher. That's marvellous, thank you. You know if you're on your own. The lads took all 5 tickets. Yeah, no. these other folks that know them all, do you? Oh, right. Well, I gave 5 tickets to rural boys. Okay, but the sad news is no one's paid for it. So I'll need to relieve you of £10. Yeah. They did say that there's people who are going to take the tickets. A message from the umpire. Yes. Can we ask passengers not to shout? I could see Claire going like this. I thought she wanted to shout. Because of the issue with the umpire.
Sorry about that. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, we've never been in a launch before. So got a bit carried away.
Okay, it's a collegiate men's race, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Oriole support. You're going to choose your seats. Oriole. Okay, well they'll need to be very, very quick. And the other bad news is they haven't paid. Nobody's paid for the tickets. Okay. Where are they? How many of you are there in total?
I'm for one.
You're one. In which case I've oversold by one. It'll be fine.
They were running to get
That's what it was, yeah.
Will you be uploading the videos after the event onto the internet?
So yeah, it's live streamed.
But once it's live streamed,
so as soon as it's finished, it will be there as a YouTube video.
The whole thing. So start just as a single video.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much.
I think whoever manages, are you part of the club?
I'm part of the OWBC in it, but I just. So
if someone at the club put breaks into it, you can see each break.
right, but it will be just a live stream.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Perfect.
Well,
4 hours.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Get tickets sometimes.
One way down the course.
little bit less windy, you'd have almost perfect conditions.
Yes.
It's lovely and warm.
Yeah, and thankfully the wind has come round. I mean, earlier on the week, state boat practice day was atrocious.
It's flashy out there when they race.
I think the worst bit is the start.
Yeah, that's that corner. Quite a good crowd as well.
Well, it's the weather, isn't it? You know, that's what makes the difference. Last year was perishingly cold. I mean, there were, but the first time race was
Sunny day.
there's only 100 cars in the car park.
I might be able to give you one of those as well, actually.
You're like, there's no way.
I don't know how to call this next one.
Ready, wait. Wait, Eddie.
Maggie, yeah.
Wait.
Collegiate races are questioning the station. LMBC think they're on the Berkshire station and Oriel on the Buck station. Over. I have them down the other way round.
Well, other than I think the Oxford lightweight reserve stroke alumni crew launched a
We'll see how they get to tell you which order they're in when they come back.
Well, we can now turn our attention to the intercollegiate men's race. And this year it features Oriel College Oxford on the Buck Station and Lady Margaret Boat Club for Cambridge on the Berkshire side, the towpath side. Lady Margaret, of course, being the boat club of St John's College. Now, Oriel have twice previously appeared in the intercollegiate men's race. They won a couple of years ago. They lost the previous year. And it's a first appearance for Lady Margaret here at the Henley Boat Races. And I'm very pleased indeed to see one of the veterans of Lady Margaret Boat Club on the commentators launch with us. John Hall Craggs, the senior man who took part, believe it or not, in the 1946 boat race. And no doubt he'll be looking for a Cambridge victory here in this race this afternoon. So the two crews coming under starters' orders, Oriel on the Buck Station and Lady Margaret on the Berkshire side. I can give you the full lineups then. For Oriel, we've got Matthew Yoriu in the bow seat, Simon Bevan at 2, Zachary Zaitchek at 3, Henry Shoulders at 4, Louis Lamont at 5, Robert Boswell at 6, Stefan Boljevich at 7, and Angus Forbes is in the stroke seat. The crew coxed by Francesca Satchwell. The lineup for Lady Margaret, Sean Shepherd at bow, Isaac Webber at 2, Tom Mosley at 3, then their captain Paul Myers is at 4, Hatem Sadiq, who's believed to be the first Iraqi student to take part in the Henley Boat Races, he's at 5, Philip Lindstedt, the American from Seattle, at 6, Thomas Cowie at 7, Daniel Lauber at stroke, and Carrie Soderman is steering them on this occasion. Well, as I was saying a little earlier, the honours fairly even between the two universities in the women's race, but in the fairly short history of the men's race, it's very much Cambridge who have the advantage with 5 wins against 2 for Oxford. Well, after a few last-minute adjustments on the start, the intercollegiate men's race between Oriel and Lady Margaret now underway. The sharpest start from Lady Margaret on the towpath side. They went off at 43 strokes a minute, but quickly gathering pace. Oriel over on the far side at 41, and the crews are pretty much level. Very little to choose between it after the first 20 or so strokes. Good, neat blade work from both crews, but Lady Margaret really getting the bit between their teeth now and maintaining that high rate as they move through the first 200 metres. And already, I think, they've taken at least a third, possibly half a length off the Oxford opposition. So Lady Margaret, it may only be their first visit to the Henley Boat Races, but really coming in, packing a punch here and taking the early advantage. 7 out of the 9 athletes in the Lady Margaret crew learnt to row at Cambridge, and the newest athlete of all, Tom Mosley, in the 3-seat, who, believe it or not, only picked up a blade for the first time last October. But a very finely drilled unit, the Lady Margaret crew, and as we approach the bottom end of the enclosures, they've already got almost 1 boat length clear as the two crews now settle into their race pace. I've got Lady Margaret now, who settled from 43. They're down now to 35. That's the sort of pace that they'll be hoping to continue through the next 1,200 metres or so of this course. Oriel also at 35, but the Oxford College really with their work cut out now to try and come back on this commanding lead, which mirrors the sort of advantage we saw the Oxford women alumni take in the first race this afternoon when they pushed in hard and had more than a boat length advantage at Remenham Club. That's exactly what Lady Margaret had done on this occasion, looking very strong indeed, and now they can see clear water ahead of them as the surface of the river here begins to even out a little. Well, I say a little, but even as I say those words, a little squall has come up, another blustery gust from the east. You can see the flags all the way down the course flowing out horizontally against the strength of the wind that is surely going to be a feature of the afternoon's racing right the way through. Oriel now being warned for their steering to come back on station, but in fact they're so far behind the leading Cambridge crew that I suspect it's immaterial. So with some 2.5 lengths to make up in the second half of the course here in this intercollegiate race, And Cambridge, who've had the strong advantage in the first 7 years of this men's race, now already look set to record yet another victory. But plenty of time yet, plenty to happen. The two crews now approaching the slight theoretical kink in the course that marks the halfway point at of the Henley Boat Race course. Don't forget that unlike the Henley Royal Regatta course, which is absolutely dead straight, the Henley Boat Race course does have a slight kink because the crews finish on the buck side. That's the far side of the island, unlike Henley Royal Regatta, where, as many of you are familiar with the river will know, starts on the Berkshire side. But we are approaching the Forley signal. We've gone through that mark. There goes the flag to indicate the Oriel bow ball passing the halfway stage, and some 3 lengths between the two crews now as the second half opens up. The umpire untroubled by the two crews' positions now and able to settle back because this is Claire Breagle's last race, her 4th and last race in the afternoon. She's had some pretty challenging experiences to cope with through the first 4 races, and able to relax a little because Cambridge have such a clear advantage as we move down past the farm, and despite Oriel taking the rate up a little bit, lengthening out, they're really not making much impression on the leading Cambridge College. I've got Oriel at 34 strokes a minute at the moment. They've been down at 34 for the last 500 metres. But Lady Margaret, with those scarlet blades flashing in the clear afternoon sunlight here, they're at 33, but they're longer, they're stronger, and maintaining this clear advantage as we move down past what, in Royal Regatta terms, would be the barrier, what used to be an actual barrier on the tow path, long since replaced by a little cattle grid there. And the two crews now beginning to move down past the closing stages of this 1,750-metre course towards the red and white checkered flag that marks the finish of the intercollegiate races. The two coxes now will be encouraging their crews to further effort, but a very fine display here from the Lady Margaret crew as they move down to the closing stages. I can see the finish judge's flag raised, and there it goes down to indicate that Lady Margaret have passed the finish line in first position, and we'll be getting the official verdict of their win against Oriel in just a moment.
Well, when you're 61, it all looks very similar.
Well, I'm now able to bring you the official verdict of the intercollegiate men's race. It was indeed a very first win here at the Henley Boat Races for Lady Margaret Boat Club, and the verdict 3 lengths ahead of Oriel College for Oxford.
Hello, dear sir.
Okay. Well, we've got the back.
Many times has been said.
I've got one of those. A Welsh, one of these. Yeah, they're fantastic. Oh, no, sorry, one of these. Oh, one of those. So you must have been pleased with that last result. Certainly was. They were at least two. Excuse me, I just couldn't resist commenting as you walked past.
We were all right.
Any other people in my generation around you? Oh, I've no idea. As I said, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to see one of those because they don't make them anymore. Yes, please. So the young lads at the moment are really seeing these sports.
And you say, what equipment sponsor? I thought I'd turn up my car.
No, yeah. I mean, we all kind of, trying to. Yeah, that was the thing. There were one or two things that he said that were quite funny, but then every time it cut to him, he was firing on the same thing, and then they were interviewing people back, and they were taking a piss out of him.
I'm going to watch the live stream.
The trouble is now you've got the light on.
I'm glad I went and got them to take it back. Well, they're just the most expensive. But usually they go to the SD card. So what is the time now? Now we're going to have a collection.
Point late now. I mean, late to wash right now. It's not going to get any fun.
No, I heard it was 1500 metres, but maybe they're actually going racing to it.
It is, well, assuming it's the red flag.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said you were off me this time. What terrible direction.
They're starting. Into the next race, and I'll give Robbie a ring, tell him where we are. Upper Thames Rowing Club. supposed to be the second best ever with the best.
Well, we're now 5 minutes to race time for the next race on the card here this afternoon, and it's a very welcome addition to the programme here at the Henley Boat Races because it's the inaugural Peter Sutherland Memorial Race. Now, Peter Sutherland was a very influential figure here on the Upper Thames throughout his life. He was captain of Leander Club from 1960 until 1962. And on relinquishing the captaincy, he then moved downriver and founded Upper Thames Rowing Club, which has itself grown from strength to strength over the last 60 or so years. Well, Peter sadly lost his life just a couple of years ago, but this memorial race, held between two crews from Leander and Upper Thames, it's very much hoped that this will be the first of an annual series between the two clubs of which he played such a great part. So the two crews representing Leander and Upper Thames, both composed of development athletes looking to compete in the club events at Henley later on in the summer. So the Upper Thames lineup includes Jake Davidson at bow, Lawrence Manning at 2, Hugh Riley at 3, Ollie Kolodzaika at 4, Zeb Newman at 5, Aaron Jarvis is in the 6th seat, James Hanson at 7, Connor Walsh is in the stroke seat, and the crew is coxed by B. Crossley. Well, for Leander, we have Max Laflave Manley in the bow seat, Bertie Woodward Fisher at 2, Harry Higginbotham at 3, Callum Johnson is in the 4th seat, Chris Ray at 5, Finn Stevenson at 6, Tom Wiblin in the 7th seat, and they are stroked by Paddy George, and the crew is coxed by Sam Royston. Upper Thames won the toss for this race. Now they chose at the Berkshire station, that's the towpath side. So you can see the dark blue for Upper Thames nearest the spectator side, and the cerise of Leander over on the far side. And for this race we've got a change of umpire. It's Chris Drury, himself a member of both clubs, competed for Upper Thames at Henley for very many years and went on to become a GB international and indeed held the world title as a result of winning the gold medal in lightweight men's eights at the Amsterdam World Championships in 1977. And in honour of this spectacular race, the inaugural Peter Sutherland race, we have senior representatives of both clubs on board the spectator launch. We have Diane Sutherland, who took over from her husband as president of Upper Thames, along with their son Justin, who's now director of rowing at Upper Thames. And we have Raz Randall, the president of Leander, and Hugh Richardson, the chairman of Leander, also on board the spectator launch. Just a couple of minutes to race time. I'm pleased to report that the wind has eased somewhat, and the flags, which were horizontal due to that gusting easterly breeze, now eased back and conditions less poppily off the start. And the start has been given. Chris Drury's red flag has dropped, and the inaugural Peter Sutherland Memorial Race is underway. Both crews going off very sharply indeed. Upper Thames currently at 44 strokes a minute. Leander at a similar rate. Leander getting the early edge. Leander, who went off at 42, so a couple of pips lower than the Upper Thames opposition, and really maintaining that high rate for quite a long way. We are through the first 100 metres or so of the inaugural Peter Sutherland race, and honours still, even as the two crews move down halfway down the stewards' enclosure. And these lumpy conditions that have been a feature during the early part of the Henley Boat Races course, making their condition felt, but not quite as much white water flying between these two experienced crews. And even as I said it, there was a misstroke there in the Upper Thames crew. I think it was the foreman there, Ollie Kolodzaika, who just slipped his blade, but now back into rhythm. But that and the increased power of the Leander crew means that Leander on the far side have gained something like half a length advantage as we move down past the bottom end of the enclosures and approaching the familiar house next to Remenham Club. the familiar house, historic venue owned by Walter Scott and his wife, who are also two members of both clubs and who have supported the sponsorship of this inaugural Peter Sutherland race and are also on board the spectator launch. So the position, a decisive move there by Leander as the two crews now approach the flagpole for Remenham and then for Upper Thames. The two clubs now getting fierce support from the towpath as Leander leads the way, trying to break clear. I think they have in fact gone one boat length clear of Upper Thames and getting quite a level of support now from the Upper Thames club. Leander at 34. Upper Thames really going to have to raise their game now to try and get back on terms, and that's exactly what they've done. Their stroke Connor Walsh takes the rate up to 36 strokes a minute. They know that something pretty special is called for to try and close this gap now as we approach the halfway mark down at Fawley. Well, Leander certainly not getting away with it. They've sat on that one length lead, and the increased rate from Upper Thames has in fact narrowed that margin very slightly. But Leander has seen them coming, and the margin is still one length between these two crews as we move down towards the Fawley marker. And I can see the flag raised at that intermediate timing post, and we'll be getting the interval from those two in just a moment. Well, in compared with the four leading races in this afternoon's programme, I'm pleased to report that the umpire is entirely untroubled. He hasn't had to warn either of these crews so far in this race. These experienced athletes who know this river so well. This is the stretch where they train every single day. The flag is now down to indicate that the bow ball of the Leander crew has passed the intermediate timing marker, and the margin is 4.5 seconds. So as a rough guesstimate, there is in fact a length and a half between the two crews at this stage. Leander then looking as though they're rowing in the more sheltered water. Now that shouldn't be the case because the wind is, of course, is coming over from the east, but the choppy conditions persisting down towards the farm. Now that's a change from the earlier races, and I have to say it doesn't bode well for the lightweight women's reserve pairs that we're going to be witnessing in half an hour or so's time. But all that's in the future. Right now in the inaugural Peter Sutherland Memorial Race, Leander sitting on that clear water advantage ahead of Upper Thames. Well, both of these crews were destined to have taken part in yesterday's head of the river race over the championship course from Mortlake to Putney. They were denied that opportunity for reasons many of you will be familiar with, that thanks to the northeasterly wind against the ebb tide, it was reckoned that the conditions were so adverse that they were going to be risking a sinking. So for the third time in the last 5 years, the head of the river race was cancelled, and these two eights now come into the inaugural Peter Sutherland race entirely fresh. Well, it's still 1.5 lengths in it, a little jink of the rudder from the Upper Thames Cox there. B. Crossley takes her crew back slightly towards the towpath. The two crews well apart now, and Upper Thames have closed the gap. The Upper Thames stroke has certainly not let off the pressure. They're powering down into the closing stages at 37, but I'm afraid it's all too late because they are within sight of the finish, and the flag over there is now down to indicate that Leander have crossed the line in first position.
No, they didn't. They failed in the end. Bad timing for the
So we have official confirmation that the result of the inaugural Peter Sutherland Memorial Race was indeed a win for Leander by a length and 3/4.
Where was fun? Yeah. I don't know. I like good quality.
I mean, I'm starting to feel a lot.
Oh, sweet.
We drank a couple more vodka before we left Putney at 8. I think people might have been living down there.
But then you always go into single and then fucking hate the single. Fuck that. Oh, alright then, yeah.
Training the single, racing the singles actually really fun.
Yeah.
I do it while I'm the singles pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Apart from Friday, we have to repeat and the course final the same day.
Oh, right.
Have Saturday off and then do his final on Sunday. And then I've done 4 races by the time they do their first and second one. Plus my race is like 2 minutes long.
I think, we probably could have done but I didn't go.
How was your boat going anyway?
Yeah, well, I was in the second day. It was alright, I was have 2 in the top 3.
No.
Top 3 as well. And then the aim was for the first day to win and I've second or third. But I think we'd have been close to them. Close yesterday about that.
I looked at the picture of it. You met Tom?
Yeah, I met him at the Christmas Carol.
That's it.
Are they doing great?
I went down to, I did like talk at LVS last week.
Oh yeah, I saw pictures.
Coach.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
boss.
Yeah, no, he said to me, picked my brain about what he'd done last year. Turned up to drop a boat and said to Finley and Toby,
It'll be quite interesting.
come over, I'm just like, well, fuck you.
And also, they got no money because they've been cutting Tim's hours. They can't afford it. He's also trying to do this. Advert in Rome,
Get stuck there. Like around here, he's like literally get every club in the country.
I still think that he should have gone to
It wasn't like a
Australia or something like that. Driving to be honest, like he goes
He will do that.
I know that, but I just kept thinking of that one that they used to run it.
I did like,
When I first started, it was like
I did start travelling.
that had no hack
And I did that for 6 years. So he's
race,
still
every single
I
race.
could really enjoy it. I think
it was late in the day. I know, he would do as well. He'd love it.
he's just very bad at switching his comfort zones, I think, sometimes.
How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Is that what she said? She had time in the race.
Hello there.
He was my coach for many, many years from junior. I named the rowing club, and now he's head coach at Clare Sport. Well, has been for many years.
That's where I'm recognising it because I just saw the article. I'm like, he looks familiar from somewhere.
Celebrity now.
Well, you know, coaching Jack will do that for you. Makes one very famous. Worthy of all kinds of articles.
So the clothes all gone to Africa now?
Not all of them. Not all of them. But yeah, like the delightful problem that I had is we were ridiculously successful.
They had far too much.
Yes. Which in some ways actually works out well because A, then we spread it out. Bring it into a bunch of big projects. So it means we don't suddenly want to put all
I had mango, that's like
everything kind of disappears because everybody will get equal hit. And then it turns out you've got it won't be a yearly issue. It will kind of as things get staggered. So they're very happy about it. Yeah.
So that shipping rowing?
Yes. A friend of mine is involved
Used to also have the they'd have a big party at the sport afterwards. I'd always get in touch with someone and end up there and it's so funny. Although I'd always be on Sunday and it'd be so tropical and I was training and stuff.
but they're also sharing
So when the holiday?
Scottish Club.
We'll going to Portugal again on.
Does anyone have any songs like this?
People like Jack.
Because I'm finding the baby's
Just a bunch of stuff.
the groove. It's really smooth.
Yeah, and I went to Barcelona.
I started Barcelona and like
I got like
across the entirety of my forehead. I think the lady in Pratt, you know they can give out free coffees once a day. I think she should put you on the spot that I had a skin disease and gave me a coffee. I need money. My friend is sat on my grandparents' fridge ice. Although it's still pretty
Why don't you hang out with your mum as well?
My mum taken my
My mum's still, we've got like a load of trees. Like there's a whole peach. They won't mind. They're nice, pretty. The grandma that I do like is also kids.
Any ticket holders for Mike Reserve?
78, brand new. Oh, well. 76 years still there.
Brand's got to go.
And then Jimmy got a new kit sponsor, so we've got a ton of... Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have a load of cookery to get rid of.
There we go. When that time comes. Grabbed some shirts, had people sign them, get more people sign them because somebody might take them down to Caversham and just leave them out for people to sign. Think of anybody, Jack, let me know. It's been a good month for Jack because I've got the Henley Boat posters that I've got people to sign. Ray, one pays 250 and the other one pays 200. Well, feeling very charitable makes it sound like I gave a lot more money than I have.
Organised a lot.
But I
Put an old man out.
What?
Don't do it.
And a lot of weird. But again, I did not play this road. I did not. That's the thing. A, it's not about me. And B, Nick was. Oh my god, Nick.
Well, Nick's one of those people that you can ask. He's a bit bad because you can ask him to do anything, he'll do it. He won't. He's too kind to say no. And
Going to a party.
yeah,
Hi.
All right, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Very well, very well.
Go for your coaching. See you.
See you later. I've never met. Looks like a completely different age.
Have they got the telemetry on? You see at what point he blew. How about now?
That's not much about this man. Reassuring. When he catches back, doubles in width.
How heavy is that?
Through one they're up. Yeah, like they're like half an hour apart.
I can't see a 10.
Yeah,
I think it should. But I do think he's the right place to go. He's a lovable old guy.
I wasn't the gym, he hadn't seen me yet.
He's doing the selfies.
Sitting on the floor taking his selfies, and I was on the other side of the room, even though I was there. I was just laughing at him. Then he went on the egg, and I did an egg next to him. He kept like doing a 1K or something. Just popped halfway through, and I was like, get back on.
Yeah, no, I think he's a bit serious, but
Is he coaching with Jack Leslie?
yeah. Coach with Shawnee, but it was awful.
No, Sean back.
we went to the lake the other day, and I was meant to be getting lift down with them, and then they just drove off. So
been a draw?
Yeah, I just had it. I just had the chili.
This is a good idea. Maybe I should consider it more strongly.
Yeah. Yes.
There's a man.
We just got the tailwind. I was thinking. We managed to not get that at that point. We revived it. Yeah. So I didn't get a tailwind downhill. I think they killed me.
It says 74 minutes.
There's a bug on it.
So that's what you saw. I'm pretty sure you saw someone drop a blade. Do you reckon it was him?
He'd done his sailing pockets and then he'd done like a few months of work.
So shall I take the ending freeze down to off?
Do it fresh go real dirt.
Oh, I did that.
I won't get as close. Oh, yes. I won't get as much depth of field though, will I?
Makes it easier to pluck. Like, yeah, well, yeah, because if you want to roast it, you don't skin it. No, because you want all the fat which is under the skin and all that stays in there and keeps it moist. Oh, right. Oh, and I've had, there's not actually a lot of meat on the goose, but it's good. Like, no, like, at home we do it, like, if we ever get like gay birds and stuff, we hang them in the garage. Like, yeah, for like anywhere from like a couple of days all the way to a couple of weeks. Oh yeah.
You don't get the flavour.
Jack, did you see they killed a goose?
Oh, yes.
Well, yeah, no, actually, like next time someone goes past, I'm going to say, like, you know, grab it. Like, I would actually cook it.
Hello.
I'll have that view.
It will hang in for a few days, so it won't be eaten straight away.
What? Taking no shit from the... No, but the way it wasn't even a small conversation. I know.
How are you? Oh yeah, because you're keeping in Shah-Rukh.
Was it? Where is it?
All right.
I think I might have switched over actually. I think she's leaving.
Yeah, she's back Sunday morning.
Okay, yeah, I'm
Ah,
Cash babes.
Natalie, what?
Have you seen the box of formal? I've seen the ones that I want. Rosie. I used to row with Rosie at Reading, and this is Sam. And you also used to be at Reading. Good to see like those guys. Sam. Sam, he's at the end and I used to at Reading. This is Rosie I used to row with. Who we won Henley with. You do that? Women. Were you in a boat? Oh, you're in that boat. Oh, Chris. You get my number. We did. Oh, no, we didn't, did we? No, we didn't. That was the other boat. I really thought this was well, there you go. Hardly things are restored Reading, so. Sorry? No, they were surrounded. Oh, the crocodiles. Mergers. Obviously, one too many times. Apart from just the obvious ones. She is story. Oh, clever.
What, like actually in here?
Do you miss it? Really?
That was watching like and I was just that's how smooth it was.
Yeah. A bit boring. Yeah. So you just got the weekend.
If she is down, I got to find out. Big marks and then there's about 3 minutes. Oh, I thought it was today. I was
Oh yeah, of course you did. Yeah, because you literally did. What happened? No, you might as well. I like these. I need to get better. Where's the other one?
Who won, James? Who won?
Leander, I think.
Nice.
George.
Yeah.
They killed us.
It's for her friend's wedding. Alex's wedding. Yeah. Oh yeah. We met him at uni. And then yeah, so she's getting married on Friday.
Like the big, like the restaurant in the house, like gentlemen's club.
Yeah.
Upstairs.
Yeah, well they're already out there. Like, yeah, they're all out there now. I'm on the group chat and singing away saying, meet at the beach. Yeah, I don't break up. Well, technically don't break up until Friday. But I'm getting thirsty right now. So on to go. Yeah, that's what I saw. At the moment I've got orange ones, but I figured if I've got black ones like that, then I'm going to go Saturday. Yeah. Well, I got one that will fit me. But the one in I was in Reading yesterday and I got one from Tesco. I took some clothes into Tesco and then wasn't going to I wasn't looking for a dress or anything, I just saw it. A Zara one.
Why? I do.
So I might like that.
Well, you've been married at school?
And it's quite like and that will be the fun. But yeah, no. Sorry, this is me not focusing. I'm gonna my new hangover has come in the form of not functioning at all. I'm not tired and I'm not ill. I might, it's just because he used to do that as part of my hydro, yeah, that's great. Do you guys want to hang out here?
It's got pocket change.
Well, welcome back to the afternoon program here at the Henley Boat Races, ladies and gentlemen. We now turn our attention to the sixth race on the card. This is the lightweight women's reserves race. And two pairs will take part representing Oxford and Cambridge. In the Oxford crew, we have Marlene Meiske and Christina Turner. And for Cambridge, we have Rosie Boxall and Melody Swires. Now, the lightweight women's reserve pairs was an event that was inaugurated last year. And it was the first occasion when we'd seen lightweight reserves take part in the official program. And this race will be the first of the three to be rowed over the full 2,000-metre course. So the finish will be on the Buck side of the island, about halfway down the island, a full international distance of 2,000 metres. So Meiske for Oxford, a German national. She's at St Anthony's College, where she rowed it in the first 8 last year, and Christina Turner, her partner from St Edmund Hall, doing a DPhil in surgical sciences. And the Cambridge crew, Rosie Boxall from Clare College, Melody Swires from Fitzwilliam. Once again, we've got a change in the umpire because for the final leg of this afternoon's program, we have Dave Hancock, a local man, been a long-time member of Henley Rowing Club, so he's taking part here in an official capacity on very much his home water, marking his return for a second year in charge of the main races of the program here at the Henley Boat Races. The start has been given, and despite the blustery cross conditions, both pairs got off to a good start. They didn't take long to get themselves straight and ready, but already a little bit of a mishap in the lumpy water in the Cambridge boat, and their steering has suffered as a result of that. And so Oxford with the cleaner start, and in expected fashion, Cambridge already being warned by the umpire to get back on station. Well, the Oxford pair, Turner and Meiske, looking very strong indeed, and already they've taken one boat length lead as we pass this picturesque wooden bridge that marks the cut where many boats, as members of Phyllis Court Club over there on the opposite bank, that's where they keep their boats under that bridge, and it's a familiar marker on the Henley Royal Regatta course. Well, in expected fashion, in these very small boats, pairs rowing is all about watermanship and technique, and these are the most challenging possible conditions for pairs. And here at these early stages, halfway down the enclosures, it's Oxford who are making the best of these lumpy conditions, maintaining the advantage. But after a little bit of a wobble, a couple of 100 metres back, in fact, Cambridge have come right back into this race. They've finally found their rhythm and are challenging Oxford for the lead here. Now, last year's race was marked by some interesting steering. Once again, they were tricky conditions with a blustery wind, and the two pairs made pretty much a zigzag course down the river. But not too many steering difficulties now. The umpire able to relax a little because the two crews are as far apart as it's possible to be, and I do believe that Cambridge have taken the lead. This is a very strong performance from Boxall and Swires now, as they, after that uncertain start through the first 200 metres, have really got into their rhythm, and I just wonder what's going to happen as the surface of the water evens out a little. I've got Cambridge at 34 strokes a minute. Cambridge are being warned a little for their steering. Oxford against them at 32. Now, have Oxford expended too much energy in that very fast start we saw them put in? Cambridge responding very well indeed to the umpire's command to move over back onto their Berkshire station. And I'm pleased to see that now that as we approach the blue ribboned events, the men's and women's lightweight boat races, which will form the next two races, the towpaths really beginning to fill up now with spectators eager to see the premier races of the afternoon's programme. But this is an astonishing performance from Cambridge here in the lightweight women's reserve pairs, because through that first couple of 100 metres I'd almost written off their chances, but a magnificent recovery, and they're looking very strong indeed, and they've gone out more than 2 lengths clear now of Meisker and Turner for Oxford as we now move down past Upper Thames. Once again, a brief warning for the Cambridge crew, but they really are so far ahead that, and in any case, in these lumpy conditions, any puddles that they send down are going to have paled into insignificance by the time they reach the other crew. Another little bit of a wobble from Cambridge. Now I just wonder, can they hang on in there? Because the rhythm that they've established through the second quarter of this course has been very strong indeed. And they now just need to sit on that advantage and just sit up, maintain that length, and think of the technique, because the good news for both crews is that the conditions are a lot smoother down the second half of the course here at Henley. A halfway marker flag is already raised opposite Old Blades, the familiar building at the halfway mark, the little red brick building on the towpath side. I'm going to get the interval for you in just a moment's time. There goes the flag to indicate that the bow ball of the Cambridge crew has passed the halfway mark. But in fact they have extended, there it goes, and it's 15 seconds. That's the margin between these two pairs at the halfway mark. So barring a disaster, I suspect that Swires and Boxall for Cambridge have got this one in the bag. But as we've seen on previous occasions, anything can happen in these perhaps the most unstable boat class of all, apart perhaps from the single scull. But in these more even conditions, I'm pleased to report that both crews now beginning to even out. Nice clean blade work, good recovery, not hitting the tops of the waves with their blades as they come forward to take the next stroke. But Oxford, I think, have expended too much energy in that initial start and are unable to match the pace that Cambridge is setting. I've still got Meisker and Turner at 32 strokes a minute, but they're shorter in the water than Cambridge. Cambridge, who are at a similar rate, but the longer stroke in the water, reaping dividends as they increase their advantage here, passing Remnant Farm. Boat speed, of course, is not just about the number of times you can get your blade in and out of the water. It's the power that's applied to the blade, and it's the length of the stroke in the water. All those three factors determine the boat speed. Cambridge now coming right over towards the buck station, but the umpire on this occasion deems it not worthy of a warning, because there's absolutely no risk of interference here, and both crews now able to glance around and just see that the finishing line at Temple Island clearly within sight. Perhaps 350 metres to go here in the second running of the lightweight women's reserve race between Oxford and Cambridge. Vauxhall and Swires now with once again a little bit of difficulty with their steering, but it's immaterial. They veered right over towards the Bucks bank, but now come back out into the middle of the river now and have the finish line clearly in their sights. If anything, the margin between these two crews has extended. I said it was 15 seconds at the halfway mark at Fawley, and I hesitate to think exactly how many lengths it is, and we're going to have to leave that one to the finish judge. But a spirited finish here from Christiana Turner and Marlene Meiske for Oxford. They've upped the rate. They're trying to close that gap. Plenty of spirit there in the dark blue pair to try and move back into contention. They've upped the rate to 34 strokes a minute. That's closed the gap a little, but the finish line on Temple Island now clearly within sight, and the finish judge's flag is raised, ready to drop it as the bow ball of the Cambridge crew crosses that line. And no doubt both pairs will be mighty glad that after the bluster of that early stages, the race is reaching a calmer conclusion. There goes the flag then, is dropped on the finish line to indicate that Cambridge have crossed in first position. Looks to be a win for Rosie Boxall and Melody Swires.
Yeah, I'll go. I can't be big enough to go. We've got any photos. Right, you see, mate. I'll get that bit talking about. Beach whale.
How was your dinner?
Yeah, banging. It's really good. Right, Jacko.
Good to see you.
Bye.
I didn't know that the Saturn here and one beard broken up. Oh, did you?
So we've just had official confirmation of the result of the lightweight women's reserve pairs. It was indeed a win for Cambridge, and the verdict was easily.
How you doing, mate? Yeah, good. Hi, Brent. had to help out. Yeah, and help give some time. And then it's like 200 quid, so it was good. It was alright.
Yeah, exactly.
Alright. How are you? Oh, I mean, I live in Henley, so... Yeah. Yeah, I'm from Leander nowadays. Yeah, just out for the day. Right, you think it's going to be a close race then? Yeah. But they should have won it last year. Like when women won, they should have won last year. But I was just watching it, and they had the wrong boat for the conditions. Like they're in the Hudson, which kind of goes like through the waves, whereas the Oxford girls had a Resolute that just goes over it. Yeah. Yeah, and they should be alright. Yeah, but it's calmed down enough. They should be okay. Yeah. Alright. Yeah, see you later. Well, you know what? It's not the end of the world. Yeah. Wednesday. Yeah. No, but like, if you get drunk on Saturday and then you do a 2K on like Tuesday or Wednesday like next week, I always want to go back. I always find you're well fueled. Apparently it's changed to Wednesday. But yeah, I'll be keen for a couple of pints today, but I'm not keen to do the ale trail. I'm too hungover for that. No, actually, well, what? Somebody said that they'd already walked up and they'd done it, but I don't know. It was definitely a beer test. Yeah, I'll be up for winning that anyway.
Dennis the Menace?
No, they do know that.
Right, he should be boating it about. He should be boating it. We have one now. Mama, he should be boating it. He should be boating it. He should be boating it. Mama, I can't hear you. Can you please take some pictures of him? He will never get before. Can you please take some photos? What do
you want to say about Kate? Is he going to book his replacement? Left women in the water. Yeah, you did that.
Well, we're now just 5 minutes away from the flagship events of the afternoon here at the Henley Boat Races. It's the women's lightweight boat race, to be followed half an hour later by the men's lightweight boat race. Now, in the women's race, this is the 34th running of that particular event. It kicked off in 1984, and since then, honours have been very evenly split because Cambridge have won 17 of those races, and Oxford are just one behind on 16, having closed the gap with last year's win by the narrowest margin of a canvas. And close verdicts, very much a feature of the lightweight women's boat race. Believe it or not, 2 years ago, we had a verdict of just 3 feet. So from a spectator point of view, we're looking for a good close race. I rather suspect that the athletes in each boat will be hoping for something a little easier. So the Oxford women who are looking to draw level for the first time in this event are from the bow seat, Hannah Patel. She's from Linacre College, reading for a DPhil in biomedical science. Then in the 2 seat, Lucy Cross from Lincoln College. She's reading for an MA in engineering science. Then we've got a dual nationality athlete, Livia Davala, who has dual British and Belgian nationality. She's reading French and linguistics at Worcester College. Rachel Anderson is in the 4 seat, reading for an MSc in radiation oncology. She's at St. Cross. Danielle Edmonds is the British student from Lincoln College in the 5 seat, reading for a DPhil in interdisciplinary biosciences. And Johanna Heyman in the 6 seat from New College, reading engineering science. Then for the stern pair, Moyo Tian from USA and Singapore, another dual nationality athlete. She's at Balliol College reading for a degree in physics and philosophy, and they are stroked by Laura Bonfils from France, who competed in last year's successful Blue Boat. She's back in the stroke seat, reading for a DPhil in engineering science. And they are coxed by Cecilia Karlsson, a Swedish athlete at St. John's College, reading for a DPhil in bioscience. So lined up alongside them and hoping to increase their winning margin to 2 races are the Cambridge crew. Reading from bow, we have a local girl, Ellie Thompson, resident in Henley, just 100 yards from this precise point, believe it or not. So she's in the first year of a geography degree. Then in the 2 seat we've got Izzy Edwards. She's at Downing College. She hails from South Wales, and she's in the 3rd year of her medical degree. We have a math student from Bristol, Rebecca Abbott from Jesus College in the 3 seat. Fenella McCluskey is at 4, reading natural sciences. Then we have Olivia Jamrog, an American student from Lucy Cavendish College. She's reading law in the 5 seat. Fanny Belay, a dual Swiss and French national student, King's College, reading medicine. She's at 6. Then we've got the captain of the crew, Ellie Hopgood, reading natural sciences at the 7th seat, and they're stroked by Iona Casley, making her 2nd appearance in the lightweight blue boat. She's at Keyes College, and she hails from a place that's very familiar to rowing aficionados, comes from Putney. And their cox today, Akil Hashmi, at Robinson College, reading engineering. And the start has finally been given for the 34th running of the lightweight women's boat race, and a good sharp start by both crews, and through those first important strokes it's Cambridge who appear to have a very slight edge now, and very high rates of striking from both lineups, and Cambridge already increasing their advantage. Cambridge at 42 strokes a minute, and the dark blues at 40, and I suspect there could be as much as half a length in it at this very early stage, and as the measure of the race begins to pan out. But don't forget, of course, that a fast start is all very well, but it's being able to sustain that pace over the full 2,000 metre of the course. That's really what counts. The two crews well apart. Umpire Dave Hancock untroubled by the position at the moment, in marked contrast to some of the races that we witnessed earlier in the afternoon's programme. And Nick Aycock, the senior Cambridge coach, sitting here on the spectator launch, must be mightily pleased with the position at this very early stage, because his crew have pulled almost one boat length clear as the race proceeds past the bottom end of the enclosures. Cambridge still with the higher rate of striking. The wind still trying to gust, but the water not quite as lumpy through that early critical period, and that has let the crews off the hook to some extent. But Cambridge at 35 strokes a minute, and they've already opened up clear water ahead of Oxford. The Oxford crew, of course, who were looking to capitalise on last year's win, and if they cross the line in first position today to draw the score level for the very first time in the 34-year history of this race. But it's not going their way at the moment as we approach the significant marker at Remenham Club. Remenham Club, founded in 1909. It's been a historic venue on the Henley course, built as a Henley base, if you like, for 7 of the premier clubs further down the Thames, such as London, Thames, Kingston, Twickenham and Staines. Well, the lumpy water may not be causing too many problems for the crews, but I can tell you the white water's certainly flying here on board the good ship Enchantress, and the spectators getting very wet indeed in the bow of this boat. But to gladden the hearts of the Cambridge supporters, they see the light blues extend their lead to more than 2 lengths now as we move past Upper Thames, and Oxford supporters on the bank lift their voices to try and raise their crew to greater effort, but Cambridge are continuing to move away, making that higher rate and that length in the water really count in their favour. Good clean blade work from Cambridge at 34 strokes a minute. They're quite long in the water, Oxford, but they're down at 31, and it's really not making an impact on the leading Cambridge crew as this 34th lightweight women's boat race approaches the halfway mark at Fawley. Well, for Cambridge to be able to look back and see that they've established such a commanding lead at this halfway mark will give them strength and confidence as the second half opens up. The flag about to be raised for the halfway mark, so we'll get a more accurate idea of that interval, but it looks to be some 3 lengths at the moment as the two crews round the slight kink in the course that marks the halfway mark. The flag has gone down as the Cambridge bow ball crosses the Fawley marker. Let's just see it now lift in a minute to indicate that Oxford have reached that point. There it goes, and the margin is now just over 11 seconds. That's 3.5 lengths that Cambridge have. Well, as I mentioned earlier, close verdicts have been the hallmark of the lightweight women's boat race for the last few years. 3 feet 2 years ago, a canvas last year. It doesn't look to be that way here in 2017, barring some sort of disaster. Okay, the gap may have narrowed a little as Oxford dig deep over as the second half unfolds, trying desperately to narrow this significant margin that Cambridge established over the first 1,000 metres. I've got Oxford now. They've gone up from 31s to 32 strokes a minute, but Cambridge have not surprisingly seen them coming. They too have raised their rate. They're up at 34 now as the two crews now move down past the Remenham farm. Well, I keep talking about the conditions because they have been significantly challenging throughout the afternoon's programme here in Henley. And in fact, now the wind has backed round a little. The lumpy water now to be found here at the barrier. But neither crew troubled too much by those slightly poppily conditions. But the gap is narrowing. Credit to Oxford. Up they go with the rate yet again. They know that they've got the full length of Temple Island enclosure to try and redeem themselves against this commanding lead that Cambridge established so early in the race. Oxford have lengthened out their stroke. They're still at 32 strokes a minute. Cambridge, for their part, pretty much steady at 34 as they have been for the last 500 metres or so. Well, I suspect it's going to be a case of too little too late for Oxford, because they still got more than 2 lengths to make up, but really pushing on hard. Their stroke, Laura Bonfils, who occupied this same seat in last year's winning crew, things have turned around on this occasion now, and the 2 crews coming within sight of the finish on Temple Island. And there must be a length and a half of clear water between the stern end of the Cambridge boat and Oxford's bow ball. The flag about to be raised then in readiness for the win by Cambridge here as they come down. They've got the overlap on the nose of the island. Oxford still pushing in hard. They certainly haven't given up by any means, but Cambridge on this occasion much the stronger, the longer crew here. There goes the flag down to indicate a win for Cambridge in the 34th running of the lightweight women's boat race. So, official confirmation that the winners of the lightweight women's boat race was Cambridge University Women's Boat Club by 3 lengths, and the winning time 6 minutes 45 seconds.
the summer.
Learn!
I really wanted a Guinness last night.
That's Toby.
Yeah, how many days is that?
No, he told me what. Well, yeah, he's
Big day of rigging as well.
and Lawrence. They were like,
I imagine it was like, you know, how
how's the chat? Completely. That was the most predictable thing that could possibly happen. Toby's not coming back to you. Oh, yeah, I remember this.
Just when you were still at school.
Like me and Toby last year.
It's going to come out. The last person to get that anyway. Such a Toby.
Should use the camera up there for that.
I feel quite bad.
What? I never see that.
He's been out 3 times.
Wow. Really?
Yes.
Alex.
No, I'm not Alex. I don't know. Simon taking gymnastics so seriously. No, but you don't get that much.
Yeah, I feel that.
Living with those decisions.
Start training now. Andy won't be a novice next time. I spoke to him the night out and he was saying how he was thinking of giving up.
To be fair, a lot of people like do it for the first year.
He said it was really good.
Opening this summer. Oh, Jurassic Park. Sorry. Oh, Jurassic Park. Oh, sorry.
And so to the final race of the afternoon here at the 2017 Henley Boat Races. It is the lightweight men's race. And this was the race that started it all off way back in 1975 when Richard Bate, an undergraduate at St John's College, Cambridge, decided that it would be a great idea to have a lightweight boat race between the two universities to mirror the acknowledgement of lightweight weight categories at international level in rowing. And it's a fitting climax to the afternoon's program here. So we've had 42 races so far in the series, and Cambridge here with a significant advantage of 26 races to Oxford's 16 overall after dominating the event in the very early stages. But it's Oxford who proved to be the stronger university as the new millennium unfolded. So I'll give you the full lineup in the two crews who are now coming onto their stake boats. So for Cambridge, we've got Chris Jones from King's College in the bow seat, reading Natural Sciences. Robbie Sewell from Fitzwilliam College, he's reading Engineering, and he's in the two-seat. Possibly the tallest man ever to row in the Henley Boat Races, 6'7" tall, and sitting literally head and shoulders above his crewmates. Venus van Venthoven is the Belgian student from Wilson College in the three-seat. Then we've got Charlie Cummins at 4, who competed in last year's blue boat. Ben Mackworth from Corpus Christi is in the 5-seat. Sam Philpott at 6. Then we've got their president, Jamie Brown, another blue from last year, at 7. He's at King's College. And finally, the 3 times former lightweight blue boat athlete Gio Bergamo Andreas, who holds triple nationality from Great Britain, France and Italy, and he is stroking the crew, which is coxed by Dom Hall. He's at Pembroke College reading Engineering. Against them, the Oxford lineup is Tom Schwantier, the Dutch student from Keble College, reading Economics and Management in the bow seat. Henry Smith is at 2. Then we've got George Watkinson reading Theology at Wycliffe Hall. He's in the 3-seat. Lost a massive 20 kilograms of weight to be able to make the 72 kilogram weight limit here at the lightweight race. Alexander Pavitt, dual nationality, Great Britain and the United States, is at 4. Then we've got their president, Rowan Arthur, in the 5-seat. He hails from, is a graduate from Bradford Grammar School and is in fact the second lightweight president from that particular institution in the last 3 years to compete in the lightweight race. Suraj Mahesh is in the 6th-seat. He's reading medicine at St Peter's College. Then we've got Alex Miles, an engineering student at Trinity. It's 7. And it's another engineering student, Douglas Chesterton from St Edmund Hall, who is stroking the crew, which has Caroline Roden from St Peter's College in the cox's seat. So, for the 8th and final time today, the crew's coming under starters' orders for the 43rd running of the lightweight men's boat race. Well, Oxford won the toss. They chose the Berkshire station, the towpath side. I'm afraid I haven't kept up to date to see whether there's a statistical difference between the two stations, but we've seen some exciting racing so far in the afternoon's program, and we're hoping for another close race here in the lightweight men's race to finish off the afternoon here at Henley. And the start has been given, and for the 8th and final time, the race is underway. Good sharp start by both crews. Cambridge having the early edge, longer and faster in the water. I've got Cambridge at 45 strokes a minute. Of course, high rates of striking, very much a feature of lightweight men's racing. And Oxford, who went off at 43, 2 pips lower, are already maybe a third of a length down after this early stage, and already now the umpire Dave Hancock is warning Cambridge to move over to the buck station because the blades of the two crews were moving dangerously close. Well, this is going to be a tight race in every sense of the word. The two sets of blades now look as though they're overlapping, and Cambridge must move over as the umpire requires if they're going to avoid a clash. Well, we've seen races where the two crews are literally the opposite sides of the river, but not on this occasion. This is very tight indeed, fighting for what they believe to be the best of the water, the best stream out there in the centre of the river. The umpire's flag now down. Hancock is happy that the two crews progressing within their own water, but still the edge has gone to Cambridge. They've extended their lead, which is now just over half a boat length. Waves breaking over the bows of the spectator launch here, and a little bit of white water flying from the two crews themselves, but Cambridge, who dropped their rate to a cruising speed of 36 strokes a minute, maintaining that advantage. Two very well-drilled units here competing in the lightweight men's race. Oxford maintaining their rate at 37. They know they've got to keep up the pressure if they are going to avoid letting Cambridge off the hook. And once again, we're looking for cheers to come from the area around Upper Thames to lift the dark blues here to try and get back on terms with the leading Cambridge crew. Just under one length in it at this critical stage. So many races this afternoon have been decided through this phase, and Oxford are coming back. They're closing the gap a little, still maintaining that high rate. Now, can they maintain it? Because that takes energy, precious energy that could stand them in good stead later on in the course, but it is so critical to get back on terms. They've had to ease back. They couldn't maintain 37s. I've got them back at 36 strokes a minute now, and Cambridge have responded and opened up the advantage yet again to one full boat length. Cambridge looking a little neater over there on the buck station, not quite so much white water flying off the end of the blade. They've got a nice clean entry and a clean exit, recovering well to take the next stroke, because they took it up to 37 strokes a minute to match the Oxford pace when they did that last kick in, just moving past Remenham Club. The Forley Markers flag has gone down to indicate the margin for the two crews, and it is now just 5.5 seconds, so that is almost 2 boat lengths. It doesn't look as that much from my vantage position behind the race here, but it is still within Oxford grasp as the second half unfolds to try and come back on this lead that Cambridge established so very early on in this race. So let's get some rates once again, because rates seem to be very, very high. Yes, indeed. I've got Cambridge maintaining 37. Are they going to go over the whole course at this very high rate? Oxford have flagged a little. They couldn't maintain that pace. I got them down at 34 now, and despite that, I do believe the gap is narrowing. Oxford longer in the water at that lower pace, but it's the leaders who are sitting up in the boat, looking very strong and confident as befits the leaders. And the umpire's flag is up once again, and on this occasion he's warning Cambridge to move back over to the buck station. But the two crews, nothing like as close as they were last time. He indicated the possible steering difficulty just moving down past the enclosures at the early stages of this race. We are now emerging out onto the open territory on the towpath as Temple Island enclosure, Temple Island Meadow makes its presence felt, and this easterly breeze that has caused difficulties for the crews all the way through the afternoon's programme, and is maintaining that pressure right through to the end, as indeed is Oxford as they kick in again. Really hard now. Can they make a real difference here? They've closed that gap of clear water quite significantly. Oxford has suddenly found hitherto untold reserves of energy. They've taken it back up to 36. Closing hard on Cambridge, but there's very little water to play for, because both crews now clearly within sight of the finish, and still the Oxford challenge builds, but they haven't quite got the overlap as Cambridge now respond, pushing on very evenly at the head of the field. Cambridge now moving away once again, the gap no longer narrowing. Cambridge at 37, kicking out, and we are now into the last few strokes of the 2017 lightweight men's boat race. And as the Cambridge craft moves now past the island, the flag almost poised now to drop and indicate a win for Cambridge, making it 2 in a row for the lightweight boat races, bravely followed by Oxford. Well, I'm now able to bring you the official verdict for the 2017 lightweight men's boat race. It was indeed a win for Cambridge. The winning verdict, 1 3/4 lengths, and the winning time 6 minutes and 7 seconds. Well, the activity on the water this afternoon not quite complete because I'm pleased to say that to finish off proceedings here at Henley, we have a row over by the Cambridge University Women's Boat Club lightweight crew that competed 30 years ago. The 1987 reunion crew is just making its way down the course. Now, I'd like to be able to give you the full name check in that crew, but I know that they're not quite complete for a whole variety of reasons. They were unable to bring all 9 athletes back together again to celebrate this significant anniversary. But the original lineup was Natasha Olby at bow, Susanna Church at 2, Sarah Jackson at 3, Pauline Whitley at 4, Helen Cook at 5, Rosa Ganderton, their captain, was in the 6th seat. Anna Yeri at 7, and they were stroked by Helen Sims with Lisa Ross-McGinty in the Cox's seat. And they won the 1987 boat race. They're back together again. As I say, not entirely complete, but they brought in 2 or 3 other athletes who competed in the lightweight boat race a year or 2 on either side. And I'm sure we'd welcome your applause as they proceed down the course now. They're roughly level with Remenham Farm, and will complete the full 2,000 metres just as they did exactly 30 years ago. So a word about the prize giving, because that's going to take place on Temple Island Meadow, adjacent to the finish at 5 o'clock. So that's in just over 3/4 of an hour's time. And the prize giver on this occasion will be Zoe de Toledo, whose long and distinguished coxing career has brought her so many rewards, including coxing the GB Under-23 Women's 8 to the gold medal in 2009. She learnt her coxing skills at St Paul's School, and then moved on to Oxford Brookes University and Leander, and of course she finished off as the cox of the GB Women's 8, proceeding through to the Rio Olympics, where she and her crew recorded that fantastic Olympic silver medal. So Zoe de Toledo will be handing out the prizes at 5 o'clock on Temple Island Meadow.